Hello and welcome back to the FEZ show. It is the 18th of June 2020 and we have a lot to discuss today after Formula E announced that how we will restart the season with a festival of racing in Berlin from the 5th of August to the 13th of August. With me today to discuss how we will restart the season is Jack Pickering and Edward Hunter. Morning, boys.
Good morning.
Yay, I was the only one who called for midweek races last time this came up, so I'm happy at least.
Well, I suppose, yeah, we were always expecting midweek races, I think. And we've got two sets, so it's not one midweek. So what I thought they might do is they would have two sets of races on the weekend and then one midweek race. But instead they've gone the other way. So we've got two midweek races. Four technically, because we've got four races, two races on Wednesday, two races on Thursday. And then we have one race, which is on the 8th and 9th of August, which is on Saturday and Sunday, like normal double-header procedure. So my only thing, Jack, is that they've got to be careful with these times. And I know you've been looking at the sun, you've been looking at the stars, you've been like, okay, when's the sun going to set in Berlin at this time? And, you know, how could Formula E do this so they have enough normal light? Because, you know, that's important because if people are at work in August, because, you know, people, normal life's getting back to normal, which it makes great sense. But if you're working on those two midweek races and you're a big Formula E fan, you have a chance of actually missing the race.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jack. I didn't expect that kind of an intro this morning, but I'm grateful anyways. No, when it was first announced, I did have a quick look at like when the sunset was in Berlin, in August, and it's looking like it's around 8:20 is when the sun will eventually go down. And so that means I think that the races will start around about 6 p.m. Central European summertime. That's because it will be after people have come back from work, but also not too late that the sunset will get involved. Because if they start at 7, the sun's really going to be in the driver's eyes. And also, I think Vernon will have to head off like after the sun's gone down. So I think it does make a bit more sense to have it at 6, which means a 5 p.m. a 5 p.m. start here in the UK. I wouldn't say that it's ideal, but I think that's probably the best case scenario. When it first came out, I was surprised by the 2 midweek slots. As you said, I thought that they'd do 2 weekends and then one set of races in the middle. But the thing is, everyone else has kind of booked their slots already, and with WEC and DTM, which are the 2 main series that all the Formula E drivers also compete in. It's they have booked up quite a lot of dates in August, which means that Formula E have had to go down this route, and we are actually having a season finale on a Thursday. I'm not 100% sure about whether this is a good idea or not. I think numbers will diminish, and which is unfortunate. But yeah, no, I'm excited regardless, because it's been a long time since Formula E's back, and I'm very happy that sport's back. I did spend a little bit of last night watching the Premier League, but yeah, no, it's fantastic that Formula E's back. They're back sooner than I thought that they would have been, but yeah, I think with the whole midweek races, they've just kind of been pushed into a corner there in terms of what they can do, because most of the dates are unfortunately gone.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Ed, is that the season finale, like, it's going to be an absolute manic 9 days of racing. But the season finale isn't on a Saturday and Sunday where, you know, you can grab so many eyes and put it on Formula E. Instead, it's on that Wednesday and Thursday. So you're losing eyes potentially for, you know, the big finale.
Yeah, Thursdays. I think as Douglas Adams used to say, I could never get the hang of Thursdays. But yeah, also interesting, Pico. I'm not sure what happens to Vernon after the sun goes down. Does he turn back into a pumpkin or something? But yeah, anyway, back to your question, Jack. In terms of not being on the weekend, I think like Pico said, it's just a sort of in terms of the other dates all being taken up by other series. We know Formula One have an ambitious plan through July and August to get as many races in as they can. I think DTM have got a similar thing, although none of the dates clash with what Formula E have chosen. That's mainly because Formula E, like you say, have chosen all those midweek weekday slots. And you can sort of see, well, at least it's not clashing with the other sport. But like you say, it's because it's while most people in European countries at least will be at work during those times. So it's going to be a little difficult. I can imagine a lot of people are going to be distracted from their work watching the race.
Yeah, because let's face it, right? So they've got an audience in Europe. This is the problem. You've got an audience in Europe, which is what we experienced with Saudi Arabia on the Friday, Jack. But then you're also taking the American audience out of this as well. Because, okay, like 6 o'clock our time, but they would have just finished their lunch break in America on the eastern side and central side, maybe central, maybe going into their lunch break. So they're in the middle of their working day. So you've taken that out. If you've got the western, the Pacific side, Australia, I suppose that's very early morning, which I suppose people could wake up for. So the problem is by having these midweek races is that, and the time that it's going to be at, is most of the world who might be wanting to watch the series might not be able to. Whereas if it was on a weekend, at least it's on a weekend, you don't have work to, obviously there will be some people that will be working on the weekend. You can't avoid that. But there should be a less amount of people working on the weekend, you'd assume. So you should be able to get more eyeballs on the actual event. But to have the finale, the season finale, who's going to be the champion? Because it probably will go down to those final two races on the 12th and 13th. And you've got potentially loads of people missing out on that.
Yeah, and I think that will be one of the issues that with this calendar. But yeah, I think, as I said, everything's just kind of been booked up. I was trying to look. I have been looking at like the dates that that DTM and WEC have done. But yeah,
the question is, should Formula E really, should they care about? DTM's on that weekend. Formula One's on that weekend. Should have just gone, look, we're the season finale. It should be on a Saturday and Sunday. It doesn't matter if DTM will start later or, look at the race times, because let's say Formula E normally start late in the evening anyway. So DTM could be finished. Formula One could be finished. So there's still that potential for the eyeballs to come on there rather than saying, DTM have that weekend, so we can't race that weekend.
Yes, and I do think Formula E should have kind of put their foot down. But the thing is, they have also got driver clashes. So like Robin Frine's racing DTM, we've got tons of drivers who also race in WEC. I think they should have worked around the solution maybe with WEC and DTM. I can't. The only weekend that I can really find when there is. The only two weekends I can find when there's nothing on is the 8th, 9th, which is the weekend that we already have. And then there isn't another weekend until the 30th. So yeah, I do think Formula E should have made sure that they had 2 weekends free that they could have done. But yeah, and I do find it disappointing because it does mean that not many people are gonna really tune in midweek. I think the fact that it's in the evening, I think that helps. But I think a lot of people are going to miss it because it's not a traditional day to have racing on.
Yeah, and that's going to be the issue. It's going to be interesting, track changes, because they said, Ed, that they're going to have 3 different tracks. When I've spoken to De Vries and Van Dorn, and they're still hopeful about these track changes, because obviously he said they would be quite boring if we race around one layout. But even though Formula E have gone on that we're going to change the track, but their drivers are like, I don't know how they're going to change the track so quickly between each event. And obviously whether or not they'll get the tracks, Van Dorn was hopeful that they don't get the tracks, so that means it makes it more exciting because they'll just be turning up on the day with a new track, no simulation data, no practice whatsoever, just go out there and learn the track. But so it's going to be interesting to see how these track changes and what tracks they actually use.
Indeed, and of course, Formula E saying they're doing our own little competition via Twitter for people to submit their own track layouts via get the template of Tempelhof Airport and you just scribble down whatever layout you would like to see on it and send it our way. But yeah, I'm not sure how many of those will meet FIA approval. But But yeah, I guess also there's in terms of the staff limit, they're only allowed to have, I think it's something like 1,000 people on site because of the social distancing requirements. So that could be quite difficult in terms of how many of that staff are going to be marshals and sort of construction workers able to, you know, rearrange bits of the track. Is it just going to be sort of little incremental changes maybe we might see? I'm not so sure because they haven't really given any kind of detail about what layouts we're going to see beyond obviously the the one we've seen last year at Temple Off, which is already a decent layout in my opinion. Another thing we haven't really talked about, that I just want to touch on very quickly, is burnout in terms of for the teams and stuff. So, because we obviously it's 6 races in the space of 9 days, that's just over a week. So, I could easily see if some of the teams, because obviously it's a long period of lockdown and not being able to do anything, and then suddenly you've got to cram all of this in. I think it could put a lot of strain on a lot of the mechanics, and especially if they have to do, like, say their driver crashes out for every race, they've got to do a repair job for the next one really quickly as well. So you could see that sort of scenario playing out.
Yeah, and the thing for me is, Jack, is could we go back to the first layout? Could they go a bit traditional and say, look, remember this first layout that we had in Berlin in season 1? You could bring that back, because obviously that met FIA standards at the time. So that would be cool to bring back. So you're going to have the new track, the old track that we went to, which would be pretty cool, and then they make one new track.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I think what they will do is they'll keep the pit lane the same, and maybe like the first and last corners, and then design the rest of the track around it. Just because it will just be too much hassle just to move the pit lane around all the time. So yeah, I reckon that they'll keep start finish straight the same, and then they will change everything else about the track. I think that. There is a possibility that we could go back to the season 1 track. And actually, I did quite like that track. I quite like the way it looked. I know that it didn't produce fantastic racing, but I did like the way that one looked.
Oh, interesting. I thought Jarno Trulli was the only one who liked that layout, Jack.
I think definitely with the competition that we're running, if Formula E do want to get involved and get one of our layouts on there, that's great. Yeah, but yeah, just to elaborate on that competition, go to Twitter, download the Tempelhof layout, and then just design your own layout on the apron, and if we think yours is within like one of the top 3 tracks, we're going to feature it on the first show of next week's FEZ show. So yeah, get involved on Twitter.
Yeah, you've got till Monday. Get involved. It's been amazing, absolutely amazing, Jack, to see how many people have already got involved in that. It's been absolutely splendid, and hopefully, if you haven't done it yet, you've still got an opportunity to do so. But what I want to talk about now is sort of there's this debate, right? There's a lot of debate at the moment about whether or not Formula E in this period should have gone to real tracks to finish the season, or if they should have just done what they're doing right now and staying on street circuits. And I feel like Formula E are being pressured quite heavily into racing on actual circuits, Ed. And personally, for me, I don't think that's the way Formula E should go. And I asked Van Dorn and I asked the Vries, did they have any sort of say? Because if you have a look at sport at the moment, NBA players, basketball, they're having a lot of say in terms of what happens, and what family they can bring to Orlando when they return to basketball. The baseball in America as well, huge talks over pay there and how they're going to restart. Every sport, football in the UK and around the world, how's it going to restart? Players saying, I'm not too happy with that situation. So then I asked the drivers and said, were Formula E in contact with you about, what you wanted to do? Did you want to race in Berlin and in this situation that we have now, or were you happy with going to race on different tracks? And what the Vries and Van Dorn said, who we spoke to this week, said, no, we didn't really have much contact with Formula E, but, we didn't really want to go and race on actual circuits because that is not what Formula E is about, which I thought was interesting because obviously the drivers have embraced this, what Formula E is. It's about racing on street circuits, and they're happy to keep that. But from the outside, there is so much pressure on Formula E to experiment and use actual circuits.
Yeah, possibly. In terms of your point about the drivers, whether they have as much influence as the biggest stars, like football players in other sports, I'm not so sure. I feel like the teams definitely have a say, and we've seen that before. But I'm not sure because I remember a few seasons ago, a lot of drivers were calling for Monaco to use the full layout for Formula E, the GP layout. And basically the teams overall, because they thought for some bizarre reason that the really short layout that had nowhere to overtake made for better racing. But I kind of disagreed with the team principals on that, but there we go. I think we do hear it a lot, especially from fans of other areas of the sport, like especially Formula One. And you hear, like, I think you were mentioning the race before we went on air, that the race did a podcast that was bringing this up, but they were calling for Formula E to use more traditional racing circuits. I honestly feel like that's more of a minority, a very vocal kind of minority, and I feel like most of the fans of Formula E actually do enjoy the street circuits because that's one of the whole unique selling points of Formula E. They can race in these places that other championships can't go to, and obviously because we're in COVID-19 situation at the moment, city centre is not really the safest place to be because that's how you spread infection very quickly. And Berlin Tempelhof is a sort of unique solution to that because it's sort of near a city centre, but it's kind of separate because it's basically an airport or an abandoned airport. But yeah, that's my opinions.
Jack, so what's your opinions like? Because racing on real circuits, we talked about it, about Valencia and Portimao, and we said it might be interesting to see how that comes about. But I thought it was interesting that the driver said that they didn't have that much contact with Formula E about how the season would be restarted.
Yeah, I think. Well, my opinion is that I feel that they should have finished this season on a proper circuit. As I said in the first episode, we should do a couple of races at Berlin and then go to Valencia. I think what they've done now, staying in the same place, I think it will work dates-wise. I mean, like we've already spoken about it, when I'm not 100% sure on it, but yeah, no, I would have liked seeing a Valencia race because I mean, if you are going to try it now. But no, I think the whole ethos of Formula E is to stay on street circuits. So this would have been my only exception to see like a proper circuit on the calendar, and then season 7 go back to normal street circuits like we usually do. But I would have liked to seen a Valencia, a Portimao, somewhere else, maybe even a Donny Park. But yeah, I think what they've done is probably the best decision because they're staying in one place, and I think that's the best thing that Formula E can do right now.
Yeah, it's just interesting because obviously for me, like the DNA of the series is city centers, and a lot of people might argue, well, we go to Mexico, and that's a permanent circuit. Yes, you are right. That is a permanent circuit, but it's bang in the middle of Mexico City. It's not like a Silverstone where it's in the middle of nowhere, or another track which is in the middle of nowhere. It is right in the city center. Like if we went to Interlagos, it's pretty, it's bangs. It's very populated around Sao Paulo. So it's pretty much in the city center. So if we went into Interlagos, it would count. So those sort of tracks I'd accept for us to race on, which are permanent tracks, because they are in the city centre. Like it still meets Formula E's ethos, but just travelling to any track just for the sake of doing a race is really out of really out of Formula E's comfort zone, I would say. And I don't know if Formula E should be actively pursuing racing on tracks where going against their ethos of bringing the race to the people, because that's what Formula E is about. It's about bringing the race to the people, not the people coming to the race. That's what they said at the beginning of season 1. That's what they stand for. And it was interesting, as I said, talking to Van Dorn and the Vries, that they believed that, and they said that's something that Formula E should keep doing. I want to move on to Audi, though. Have a little bit of a chat about Audi, because we were talking about the calendar just not too long ago, and obviously not clashing with DTM. Now, I have a feeling, and René Rast is testing this Audi car, and obviously he'd be driving in DTM, and there was a lot of speculation if Formula E would clash with the DTM race on the 13th and 14th, which they have not done. So therefore, Rast is going to have a busy, if he does sign for Audi, Ed, he's going to have a busy week because he's going to be racing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So he's going to have 5 days of racing, which I'm sure he's delighted about, to be honest with you, because if I was a racing driver, I'm pretty sure I'd be delighted about racing pretty much every day of the week, but he might be tired come Monday morning. But I have a feeling, I'm not saying Formula E have put the season finale on a Wednesday and Thursday just so Rast can drive in the Audi car, but I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly in terms of logistically, it seems to work out. It would work out okay for Rast if Audi do sign him. A lot of ifs and buts here, but it's strongly rumoured that he's the one they're looking at the moment. I guess in terms of having to do all that quite quickly, it helps him also in terms of track time because he hasn't tested the Audi yet, apart from I think one private test that Audi have done during the lockdown at the moment. With I think Grassi may have been involved as well, from what I read. And I think apart from that, the last time Rast actually raced a Formula E car was of course back at also in Berlin, but at Karl Marx Allee during the second season when they raced literally in the city centre, which of course they couldn't do at the moment, not because of the pandemic, but because the Green Party voted them out of there. But anyway, I think it'd be really interesting to see how quickly Rast adapts, whether he might be quite a bit race rusty during the first race, and then by the final race in Berlin, the season finale, whether on that Thursday he's suddenly up to speed and suddenly getting the most out of the Audi, which of course we know from what we see previous in the season wasn't exactly class of the field in terms of we saw De Grassi struggling to qualify it particularly high up. So it'll be interesting to see if over the break Audi have been able to, obviously they wouldn't be able to develop that much, but whether they've closed the gap or not to some of the other teams.
Yeah, what do you think, Jack? Obviously, Rast I think is testing the car again at the beginning of July, so in a couple of weeks' time. I think he is testing the Audi car again. And I think it's the season 7. So it's not this season's car. I think it is next season's car. They're doing another couple of season 7 testing. Do you see him, if he does do well in these couple of races, do you think Audi will stick with him and that's it? You'll be De Grassi and Audi going into season 7? Or do you think, he'll finish off this season and Audi have got such a wealth of drivers that, they could evaluate other drivers in the off season and maybe pick someone else?
Yeah, I think that Rast is the option that they're going to go for. I think he was hotly tipped just like hours after Abt was given the chop. Rene Rast was the hot tip. I think it was him, Muller, Freins, and Kevin van der Linde. I think they were the only 4 options that Audi could have done. I think Freins will stay on at Envision Virgin if Rast gets the seat. Nico Muller, I think he needs another few seasons in that Dragon to properly get up to speed in Formula E. We've seen good things from him so far. He had a 7th in Mexico City qualifying, but yeah, I feel like he still needs to. I think Rene Rast, he's a 2-time DTM champion. We didn't see his full potential in season 2 in Berlin. And so I think this is the time. I think that Berlin in August will be the litmus test for him to see how well he does in a works car, even though the car, as we've discussed, is far from Audi's finest. I think what we will see in Berlin is Rast see how quick he can get up to speed in the car. He's got 6 races to prove himself, so I reckon he should have enough track time by the end of it.
Yeah, as I said, it's all speculation at the moment, but it's increasingly, it's one of the questions that we are asked the most: who's going to be in that Audi seat and who's going to be in that Mahindra seat, Ed? And for me, I feel like Rast is pretty much nailed on now. Obviously, Kelvin van der Linde was also tipped, but it looks definitely more like Rast. Who's, having a look at Kelvin van der Linde's career and what he's driven. He's mainly just driven GT cars. He's come up through the ranks through GT, whereas Rast has obviously done a lot of DTM experience as well, but he's got a bit of single-seater experience. So maybe that's one of the main reasons why Audi are favouring Rast over Kelvin van der Linde at this moment in time.
I think it might also just be because he's a bit older than some of the other drivers that he's been testing, and he's more experienced. Although I did find it interesting that before the whole app situation, that they hadn't put Rest in any of the. Of course, they couldn't because he did the race for Team Aguri in season 2, like I said. But they were testing Van der Linde and Mattia Drudi in the young driver test at Marrakesh, maybe just to evaluate them and see how they would go, which is cool. So Audi have got a lot of options, and I think it's going to be up to Alan McNish and the Audi board really to pick whoever they see fits them best. And the fact that they've been testing Ras so much, like you say, strongly suggests that that's who they're going for. As for Mahindra, it'd be interesting. I personally think they might go with a safe pair of hands to see out the season. Like Nick Heidfeld, he's German as well, so will fit in well at Berlin. And I think they might evaluate someone else for season 7.
Yeah, I think for Mahindra, it's either Sam de Jong or Nick Heidfeld. Makes sense putting Nick Heidfeld in the car because he is the reserve driver. Like he still travels to every race pretty much, and he's still there, just giving guidance and having a look at the car and the team. So he's there. I think it makes sense to put him in the car. I don't think he'll be there for season 7 unless he does an amazing job in these 6 races that we have, Jack. And then he decides, well, Dilbag and Mahindra decide, and Heidfeld's happy to race again in season 7. That would be one hell of a story.
Yeah. I think the general consensus is that Nick Heidfeld will be in that seat in Berlin. But yeah, no, I strongly think he won't be in that seat in season 7 unless he goes out and wins at least 2 of those 6 races. I reckon that they will choose someone else for season 7. We've touted many drivers on this show. We've touted Ollie Turvey. We've touted Sergei Sorokin. We've half mentioned Daniel Abt, but I don't think Abt will be on the grid next season. But yeah, no, that it's obviously going to be Mahindra's decision when it comes to it. Season 7 still half a year away, so yeah, they've got a small time period. They've probably got another 2 or 3 months to decide who they want in that seat. But yeah, no, I think when it comes to Berlin, it will be Nick Heidfeld, and unless he does exceptionally well in these races in Berlin, he won't be on the grid in season 7. But it'll be a nice little send-off for him.
No, of course. It'll be, 6 races he probably never thought he was going to do, old Quick Nick. But the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up the show is, we were talking about it earlier in terms of the, actual tracks and the peer pressure that Formula E is under to sort of become Formula One in a sense. And, Alejandro Agag is still, saying that, a future F1 and Formula E merger in the future could be something that happens. And honestly, I think Formula E need to, and I think the drivers that are in the series now would agree, and especially from who we've spoken to so far, that, they want to make a clear differentiation between Formula One and Formula E and let them go off in their own directions. But Agag keeps trying to bring them together and say, hey, these 2 series can merge. And, if Formula E are stamping their ground and saying right now, Ed, that we're racing on street tracks, we're not going to go to actual tracks. But if we were to merge with Formula One, then we'd be going away from that and say, we'll race on actual tracks. But I don't know. What's your opinion on a Formula One, Formula E merger? For me, I think Formula E should stay well clear and do their own thing and be their own championship rather than thinking of potentially merging with Formula One just because people want them to.
Yeah, and one of the things that Agag kind of mentioned as a sort of caveat to what he was saying is, we have an exclusive 25-year license, and the only thing that sort of connects us to Formula 1 at the moment is the fact that John Malone, who basically heads up both Liberty Global and Liberty Media, basically effectively is the majority shareholder of both Formula E and Formula 1 in terms of the companies that own them and control them. So that would be the only reason why they might merge, I think. But in terms of having that exclusive license, from a Gag's point of view, he hasn't got, especially right now, not a huge amount of motivation to really push for that. And so it was interesting that he's even commented on it at all. I guess it must have just been a question that came up at the FIA thing they had recently. And And it always feels to me like a gag likes to have Formula E be the center of attention. I don't know, that he will say certain things like this. That, oh, maybe one day Formula One could merge. I know Verne said the same thing too, not too long ago. But to me, I think he said things like this before. Do you remember a couple of seasons ago where he said, "Oh, formally, we're going to change Donald Trump's mind about climate change"? And I don't think they've even made too much progress on that front. That felt like a gag, sort of trying to be topical and trying to engage people there. I don't know. It just seems to me like not like something Gag has said, but with not a whole amount of substance to it at the present moment.
Yeah, I suppose Formula E have been one of those who have said some things that you're like, why are you saying that? Because you can never actually achieve that. But honestly, Jack, I think this is something they should stay away from. I think Formula One, is here to stay. Formula One is Formula One, right? Imagine 2050, right? There is no Formula One. What are we going to call it? Formula E1? I don't know.
That's what my mum calls Formula E at the moment, Formula E1.
So, I don't think that's going to go down. And obviously, hopefully in 2040, 2050, we're still alive and kicking. But, even the historic people who we will be one day will be pretty annoyed if there's a merger. I think these are two really strong championships that Formula One can progress in its own way, and Formula E can continue to progress in its own way. And we've got, different races to watch. If you merge them together, you're losing at least a racing series that you could watch on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to be taking bets on which one of us three is going to be around in 2040, 2050. But yeah, no, I think for me, definitely not merging them. I don't. With Formula E and Formula One are two completely different things, and they should stay that way at least for the next 25 years. So yeah, I don't see either of them changing. But as I've said a couple of times before, maybe have a diesel electric kind of thing for Formula One, so that it isn't so that it isn't completely the same as Formula E. But yeah, no, I think those two should stay different, and at least until around 2040, 2050. If it does get to that point, and they do seem to be heading towards a merger, then so be it. I mean, there's not going to be much that us three can do. I'm no offense in any way to you two, but I don't think there's going to be anything that us three are going to be able to do if those two do merge in years to come. But no, I think that they should stay rather separate. I think
we could be running Formula E here. We could be running it. It could be our baby. We could have taken over. We could have taken over.
Actually, I would actually vote for Jack to actually own Formula E.
Yeah,
I think he's got some good ideas.
I've got big business brain here. Big business show. Oh, the FEZ show. We know what we're talking about.
We run this sport. Us three from bedrooms in London and Oxford.
How many times have we said something on this show and then Formula E did something very similar to what we just said?
Fair point.
Well, they do what Mr. Pickering says. They don't seem to be interested in what I have to say, but I seem to be the odd one out of us three.
Well, yeah, no, I've got the track record of naming the race home winners before they happen. So
well, I don't think that is what they're looking at. But the race at home championship, in terms of we were pushing for it, and then it eventually came. Some of the ideas of changing things in the race at home championship then happened after we discussed it on the show. So.
We are genuinely going to design this Berlin track, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to design it. We're going to put it on the internet, and then that's going to be the track, lads. So let's end the show here. I think that's the show, because what we've realised is that you have the chance to actually build the Berlin E-Prix track. So, do as you will. Make sure it's as best as you possibly can.
Only you can save Formula E.
Only you can design a Formula E track. So there we go. Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Oh, cheers, Jack. Let's not get too big-headed here. Let's end it.
Well, but just a few housekeeping. Remember, we have a new Twitch channel. There will be a link in the thing there, or in the description. That's the thing. So come and join us. We should be streaming some R Factor 2 later today, so come and join us. Also, there'll be a link to the Discord channel, and please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. You've been watching the FEZ show. We will see you next week. Goodbye.